we have the last day of September and a great CodeX session ahead of us with 3 fantastic speakers. Neil Peretz, who's been with us before, will give us an update on his contract wrangler story, which, as I understand, was recently acquired by another company. Then Paul Kang from Fast Visa, founder and CEO of Fast Visa, will share their story with us. And then we have Jacqueline Schaefer, founder and CEO of Clearbrief, who will talk about their AI-powered writing tool, which supports legal briefs and legal drafting. So 3 great presentations ahead. We have 1 hour, so if I could ask the speakers to keep their comments to less than 20 minutes. In fact, if you could speak for maybe 10 minutes or a little bit more than 10 minutes, and then leave the rest for Q&A, that would be fantastic. And before I turn it over to Neil, who will be our first speaker, I will, as always, ask you folks in the audience to share any news or updates, and perhaps you can use the chat function if you want us if you have any news for the group to share, or any needs you may have. So please use the chat function to do that. I see Bruce has his hand up. Bruce, do you wanna say something? There you are. Oh no, we can't hear you. You have to unmute yourself.
Yes, of course. After a year and a half, I should have. The report I've been working on to understand how to budget for space infrastructure as a country got released this week, and I'll put the link in the chat. But it's going to create a little bit of discussion in Washington, where conversations about budgets seem to be timely.
Cool. Thank you, Bruce. Congratulations. That's fantastic news. Okie doke. Anything else? Let's see. Okay. Nothing else at the moment. So with that, I will just turn it over to Neil. Neil, are you there?
Indeed, I am. Let's see if the
there you are. So
computer lets me acknowledge that.
Oh, we can see you. Great. Okay. So I should say this is part of our series where we, lessons learned from somebody who has gone through the ups and downs of building a company, building a successful legal tech company. And we're curious to learn about your experience, Neil. Over to you.
Lessons learned, punishment received, all of the above. Well, in honor of CodeX's great support of Legaltech, I thought I'd show how the little tree can grow into the mighty Stanford CodeX tree there.
I like that.
So some quick background on contract wrangling for those who might not have tuned in before when I chatted about it. The basic concept here was that I was working as an in-house attorney and had a problem. People would ask me and other attorneys to help negotiate agreements, and a lot of effort was put into that. But on the execution side, implementing the agreements, there were some substantial problems because people did not remember what was actually in the agreements. And I had actually worked prior to being a lawyer as a CFO, as a CEO, as a COO. So I had a perspective on other departments, and I knew that they also needed to know the details of what's in the contracts. And they simply were not keeping, either didn't know it or weren't keeping track of it. And that's the problem I set out to solve. Initially, I looked at contract management systems because I thought, hey, they're contracts, someone can manage them, that should solve all the problems. But it turned out that those were largely useful for generating additional contracts and not helping me sort through all the ones we already had. And while the future contracts are nice to take care of, they represent a small percent of all the contracts we have. So I set out on a mission to solve the 9 months later problem. So what did we agree to? And in case you're wondering, the middle picture there, yes, that is from the Raiders of the Lost Ark. The Lost Ark of the Covenant is sitting right next to your MSA, guarded by top people. So along the way in starting the company, I got really accelerated People used to joke we are the most accelerated company out there, whatever that might mean. What it means is if you have questions about accelerators, I'm happy to answer some of them. For me, the best
I need an
experience.
arborist.
All right.
I can't imagine what it's going to cost to do 3 now.
So I think we're picking up some audio from someone. Can you please put yourself on mute? Thank you very much.
I muted him. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Susan. All right, back to you, Neil.
I heard something about an arborist. It sounded quite interesting to me. I thought maybe that's another incubator. We could join the arborist incubator. So for me, the
You
best
started the
experience.
theme on like little trees and then the Stanford and somebody.
Yeah, I probably should have had the StartX one be last to go with that theme there, to grow into the bigger tree. I think the main benefit for us of the accelerators was we were able to go learn about interfaces of systems we wanted to connect to. B, there was probably credibility boost. People hadn't heard of us, but they'd heard of the groups we were affiliated with. And C, it helped us get access to potential clients. So for all those reasons, I would recommend certain accelerators, but please note these are all accelerators that don't take equity. So that's, if people have accelerator questions, happy to answer them. We had great backers for the company. And one of the things that I found is if I were to go look up Legaltech VCs, well, I wouldn't find that many. Now, if I were to look up enterprise software VCs, well, yeah, there's a whole bunch of them. Throw sticks around the greater area around Stanford, and you'll find lots of enterprise software VCs. And that really tended to be the types of discussions that we had on Silicon Valley. So I'd advise anyone to consider their positioning carefully before they go to market in that regard. And I've got the little angels in the corner there. And, frankly, we couldn't have made it without them. We had, for example, the former CEO of Sapient, a large IT services company. And it gave us a lot of credibility in the enterprise software area. He was one of our largest angels in the group. So from a market perspective, we solved the problem. We have multiple trillion-plus-dollar banks on the platform. We've got large tech companies, Nextdoor, Zscaler, Fujitsu on the platform. We've got large manufacturers like Flextronics on the platform. So we ended up solving the problem of, hey, what did we negotiate? What are we supposed to go do afterwards? And we then implemented a lot of these clients. So that part of the journey was quite rewarding. And then I think from the investor perspective, it was rewarding as well. The shareholders were happy with the result. We did merge it with Conga, which is essentially the largest, I think, contract management company out there. It's Conga and Aptus put together. And I think the interesting result for the market is it is the first truly end-to-end solution that it has all the best of breed components for either generating contracts, routing them around for approvals, and then figuring out all the existing contracts you have. And what it turned out was, yeah, Conga didn't really have a great capability. Well, that's an understatement. Conga had no capability to understand what was in your existing agreements, and we did. We, on the other hand, didn't do anything about generating contracts. So this was kind of a Jack Sprat scenario for us. So we really couldn't have asked for a better combination partner than there. And I think it'll probably play out well in the market. I was asked to talk here about lessons learned, and I'll try to run through them real quick. First lesson, lawyers make really bad customers. And for those of you out trying to sell legal tech, you probably already know that. I think that if you can sell to someone other than lawyers, particularly law firm lawyers, good for you. Because lawyers tend to treat the perfect as the enemy of the good. And if something's not perfect, well, go back to the drawing board. We're not going to go ship it at all. And I have this experience actually having lawyers working even in product management on our side. We'd solve a problem that would help maybe 90% of the people. The lawyer would say, all right, well, we're not going to ship it yet. We're going to go back and work on it until we help the other 10%. When that's obviously not the ethos that we work on in Silicon Valley, getting stuff out the door. So if you can find folks other than lawyers, or at least find in-house folks, that is a much better market for your target. The other thing that really I thought about a lot, and of course is still an ongoing effort to explain to folks, what potential customers is, I'm not really selling something related to legal. You have to describe what you're doing as part of a business operation. And law, if you think of law as more so the handmaiden of how you carry out your business in a compliant manner, well, then you're really helping the business process. And that is something that the customers are much more interested in. If you think about a contract, which I thought about a lot, the contract really is the blueprint for how you run a lot of your business. What are your obligations? What are your rights? Who's supposed to do what? And it can range from the payment department on down to the IT department. So put everything in a business context, and you'll find a much more receptive audience. Lesson 3, wow, there's a lot of ways to help people outside of legal to make money or save money. And this is too many examples to go read through right now in a lot of time, but think about procurement. Hey, wouldn't it be good to bid stuff out before it auto-renewed on you? Yeah, it would. You could save a lot of money doing that. Wouldn't it be good to go call up to identify which customers you could call up to raise the price on an annual basis if the contract allowed it, which customers have contracts that don't allow it. These are all just money on the table. And there's ROI for people outside of the legal department. Now, before you can go sell the ROI outside the legal department, lesson 4 is think about your client. And I have found some attorneys really don't care what happens outside of the legal department. They would like to get done 20 minutes early or shave 10 minutes off their day or an hour off their week, and that is enough for them. And they don't really care about the implication for the rest of the business. And then you have other attorneys who actually care about the bigger business picture of things. So you have to figure out, is my client trying to save time for themselves? Are they trying to cut risks for the company? Are they trying to make money? And actually have different messages for different audiences. In our experience, over the long run, providing solutions was a much better path. And we worked in the machine learning space. It's quite noisy. I have machine learning everywhere. My iced tea up here probably has machine learning built in somehow to screw the cap on. A lot of the machine learning and AI out there are essentially little pieces of tools, some of which are available open source. Stanford has some great tools, for example. And those don't actually solve the problem. My VP of product was always quick to point out that sometimes a customer, if you show up with a hammer and a nail, customer is happy, but what they really want is a hole in the wall. And you don't really need to use a hammer and nail. There could be other ways to go do that. What we found is customers had bought pieces of tech in the market, and then invariably they couldn't put them together and make them work together, or there was still too much effort on their part, and these pieces of tech just sat and gathered dust, or I guess digital dust in that case. And eventually those customers churned out of the competitors' products and switched over to us because we had a solution. So it's a slower sell at the beginning, but you're likely to get customers churning out of other systems. Now, I mentioned other departments. One of the key learnings we had is you really need to interconnect other business systems. And it's other business systems that people outside of legal live in. And frankly, they sometimes force legal to live in these systems as well. I know software development companies that use Jira or Trello for software development. Now they make the law department use those as well for issue trackers. So you basically have to go, it's not enough to just say, I have a result that might be of interest to, let's say, the finance department. I have to actually interconnect to the finance department system where they spend their time. You can't assume people are going to go to your dashboard. Now, the nice thing about tying yourself into enterprise software, for example, connecting to SAP or Workday is possibly those are channels for you because there are already a lot of users of Workday who want this ancillary solution. What I learned is if you want a partner to go promote your product, you need to find a way to help the partner promote their own product. It is not enough to just give a commission because the client will lose his or her, or not the client, but the partner would lose his or her daytime job if they don't succeed in selling their core product. So just giving them a commission from you doesn't really help. If you can show, on the other hand, that the partner can go sell a lot more of their own product or have greater retention or greater usage, that all of a sudden is what excites channels. Now, I mentioned pushing things into business systems. One of the, not really discoveries, but one of the areas where I think that some aspects of machine learning and legal tools come short is if you want to connect to other business systems, you need a greater degree of specificity than many tools provide. And this is a dichotomy here. Would you rather get pointed to the water clause, or would you rather actually have some water? If you think about loading up Salesforce with contacts, it's not enough to just say, hey, I found the paragraph here that might have a contact detail in it. You need to extract the actual structured data down at the unit level that the other business systems would use. So I'd say not all AI is created equal in that regard. And if you aspire to connect to the business systems, think about the level of specificity you need. This is a topic that still surprises me. There's new legal tech companies popping up all the time, and often they don't have any lawyers involved. And for those of you in Silicon Valley, I'm sure you've seen plenty of hubris or just a perception that, hey, if you could do software, everything else is easy. And that's why we see Silicon Valley venturing into every other area of life. And sometimes it doesn't always play out so well. It turns out you need the domain expertise. So I mentioned needing structured data. Imagine if there's an indemnification clause and your client actually cares about what they're indemnified for. A machine, a software engineer, is not going to be able to identify the different categories very easily that are relevant to break the indemnification down into, or subcategories. You need attorneys for that type of activity. So to the extent folks are new on the call building a legal tech, I advise you to bring some attorneys into the mix, at least when you're creating your product or understanding what the customer wants. Special teams. It turns out, not surprisingly, most attorneys don't have a lot of management training, but you can get people who have logistics and operations and other backgrounds and combine them with attorneys, and they work fantastic together. And that's essentially what we did. We built this big loop of, I had ops people who would work with the attorneys to make sure that scheduled and managed properly. They tie into the machine learning people, they tie into the software engineers, design. It worked in a big loop, but it really took this variety of different characters. FUD, well, hey, we live in Silicon Valley. There's plenty of fear, uncertainty, and doubt out there. Hey, is Google going to build this into the operating system, for example? We'd hear questions about that. My experience was you need to go talk about, A, if the client has the problem right now, how are they going to solve the problem right now, not the future, how it might be solved. And B, just go run head to head. And it's sort of, you got to get people look behind the curtain when that comes up. Got skipped one here. Not all AI challenges are equal. If you're thinking about using AI, try to study the heterogeneity of the problem you're working on. If there are lots of different options, expect a bigger lift on the AI side, or you need to get to greater scale in terms of number of agreements or problems you analyze. So in the interest of time, I will wrap up. Has the war been won? Have we gotten rid of all the attorneys? Is legal tech going to take over everything? And the answer is, well, we're not even close. Law is still largely a craft. So my lessons for this are all of us in legal tech need to educate clients about, A, how can technology help? And then B, what are some new business models that can come out of that people might be receptive to? And last, I'm working on some new stuff. So I advise legal tech and fintech companies, and I'm helping with a new legal tech startup that does claims as a service, but we'll save that for a rainy day.
So yeah, hopefully you will present that to the CodeX group sometime in the near future. I'm wondering, Neil, when did you know that you had product market fit? Many times startups, they have a thesis and they test out some things, but it's sort of the match, the holy grail. I mean, when you have product market fit, when did you have that moment?
I think in some cases we had clients under substantial pressure, and the problems we were solving related to an urgent business situation for them. For example, there might be new accounting rules they had to go comply with. So it was quite obvious whether they hit the deadline or not, and they were otherwise up against the wall. So basically, if a client said, I met my challenge, my boss is happy, or I met my goal, and I couldn't have done it without you, that tells us we have a fit, at least with that client. Then the question is, how generalizable is that? And is that client referenceable or not? So really finding an urgent need on the client's behalf is probably a key to testing that out more quickly.
Well, maybe we have time for, one more question. If anyone has a question. folks, and you have to unmute yourself. Bruce, go ahead, please.
Neil, it's awesome to see you. Thanks for staying with the program. You know, your career is so long and you've gone through so many hops. I wonder if you think that, consistent with CodeX, what is the missing gene for lawyers that they don't get some of this? You know, why do they make it harder than it could be? I mean, in your presentation, you talked about don't sell to lawyers. Well, what is the missing gene that they were trained in law school to cultivate, like the word no, that you would want to change, and that CodeX could be effective in helping to change?
Oh boy, it's a great question. I think about it a lot. There's so many different trails through the legal education. I mean, just think about, you know, working on Law Journal. Oh, we better check the footnotes and better have more footnotes about the footnotes, right? That is not a real scalable scenario, for example. Or when you learn that the answer is it depends, that doesn't really get you to an answer. Or we look at our own constitutional law. I think what people don't appreciate is law school teaches you about a single case or a single problem, but in our real life, in the industrial world, we have these things at scale as problems. And we're using the computers to promulgate more and more, if you will, private law. And of course, the government's promulgating more public law as well, at an incredibly rapid pace. And we're still learning how to deal with these things on a one-off basis. So if there was a discussion in law school about how do I deal with this systematically, well, that would at least start down the path of opening people's eyes to the idea that sometimes you need to round the edges.
Yeah, that's great, especially in the arbitration, commercial arbitration area. I think you've spoken about before, that there's a whole hidden legal system going on there that we need to get our hands around.
Great. Well, Neil, there's so much more to discuss, and it's always fascinating to listen to you. And thank you for sharing the lessons from the contract wrangler adventure. And I'm really glad, you know, we talked a few years ago when you started out, and I'm really glad that you brought this to a successful conclusion, and that you are able to share with us, you know, what you learned from that. I think it's very helpful for others in the legal tech community to learn from folks like you. So really appreciate you taking the time and sharing, and hopefully we'll hear about proxy file sometime in the near future, or Enumero, or both. We'll see. But great to have you. Thanks again, Neil.
Yeah, Neil, just echoing Roland, thank you so much. If you want to drop your email into the chat so others can find you afterwards to continue the discussion if they want, that would be awesome.
Be happy to. I see some, at least I can't say familiar faces because some of you don't have images up, but at least see some familiar names here. So great to see all of you, and look forward to you talking. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Neil. Okay, then over to Paul at Fast Visa. Paul, are you there? Hello.
Yeah, I'm here.
There you are, Paul.